Violet Evergarden, the movie. So, as with a lot of anime series that either run out of money or there wasn't the manga or light novel wasn't finished when they were making the show, or they had extra money and they wanted to do something special, or they thought it was a good chance to cash in because the anime series was popular and they could release this in theaters and make more money. Whatever the case was, this is one of those shows where the actual anime plot line is concluded within the movie. The movie is not just some stupid spin-off or OVA. It's actually a direct sequel, or it's actually directly relevant. So when I first heard of this, I was just like, I don't know. I thought the show ended decently well. I guess the only real mystery left is whether the Major was actually dead or not. I think the show tended a bit more towards the idea that he was dead and that it was about Violet kind of letting go of him. And we'll go into more of that in a bit. But I was just like, is it really necessary to have a movie? Was there any real loose ends other than maybe Violet's background, which was never really an important part of the show, that we even need to go into detail on? But I guess they did because they made this film. Now, when I first looked at it, I'm like, this movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. Generally speaking, I think most of these like anime movies are like 80, 90 minutes, the minimum they can get away with and still get it into a theater. But this one was really long, like longer than a lot of Hollywood movies. It's towards the upper limit of what would even be acceptable in a normal movie, with 3 hours and 30 minutes kind of being the hard cutoff for what audiences will sit through. That being said, though, I'm like, oh, I'm sure they're going to fill this off. It's not going to just be filler and side plots that have nothing to do with Violet and just shit like that. I was wrong. This film had a lot of padding in it. This film probably could have been almost an hour shorter, and it would have been better for it. Overall, I think this movie was pretty bad, and it did kind of shit on the original series. It's hard for me to kind of get angry about it, though, so I'll be very critical of it, but it's not something that really makes me feel bitter or angry or something that I actively hate. I just think it's something that was very unnecessary, that undermined a lot of the original show. And if they were going to take these ideas, they maybe had some potential, but it's just very poorly implemented. And the storytelling and the way that the film was made leave a lot to be desired. So the movie opens with a framing story, which I generally speaking hate. I don't like things, generally speaking, that take away from the main plot. Because when you're watching a movie like this, you want it to talk about Violet, you want it to talk about maybe the other employees at the postal company, maybe whoever letter she's writing in the particular case, and in this film, the Major. That's who you want it to focus on. You don't want to focus on some random ass people who have nothing to do with any of them. If you're going to do a framing story, I kind of like if it's something like Hero, where the main character is talking to the Emperor, but it's the main character. It's not some fucking randoid who they just took from nowhere. So it opens with this framing story where the great granddaughter, I think it was, of the person who she had written the letters for the 50 birthdays has died. No, is the main character. I don't know. I find the timeline in this film very hard to keep track of because there's so many like granddaughters and great granddaughters, and I don't know how long time has passed and that kind of thing. But to simplify it, we'll just say a descendant of the woman who she wrote the letters for. And she is kind of curious about what the process was involving that, and she kind of wants to investigate the story of Violet Evergarden, as her name's kind of faded from history and people don't really remember her. Now, this is something else I always hate, this whole, oh, your memory's going to be forgotten thing. Oh, it's the future. It just, to me, kind of feels like it's shitting on the original, because it's trying to say, like, in a historical context, none of this really mattered. No one really cares about this, that kind of thing. And once again, it's like, I kind of get what they are going for. I get that that's normally the case, but I don't think it really makes a compelling story, because in a lot of cases, the character is kind of the center of the world. and the center of the story you're trying to tell. And sometimes it is good to have it then placed in the context of the wider thing, and then it's a struggle against historical forces or a struggle against the nation or something. But I tend to have a more romantic view of things, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Just up front, that's once again the framing. That's what we're choosing to devote like an hour of this movie to, this mostly unrelated plot of some woman in the future searching out Violet. So once again, that just rubbed me the wrong way right off the bat. So we get into the actual bulk of the movie, which is Violet. So this takes place several years after the series. Hopefully Violet's 18 by this point, or then the later part of this film will be even more awkward than it already is. And the post office looks like it's going to come to an end because they're adding in telephones and people aren't going to send letters anymore, because we all know nobody uses the postal service anymore. There's no need for deliveries, and the dolls are all going to lose their jobs because professional writing is something that was completely eliminated when telephones exist. There aren't professional writers anymore. There aren't even people who do transcripts anymore. So their jobs are all just going to disappear, even though in terms of the show, the majority of the people they were writing for were literate anyways, and it was more their actual skill in writing than the physical ability to read and write. That's irrelevant. The job is going to disappear because of evil technology or whatever. So in a Clannad tier sentimentality thing, Violet is called by a child who's dying, but has kind of been a brat to his parents and siblings. And she asks him to write, he asks her to write letters for him that'll be given to his parents on the day he dies because he doesn't have long to live. And there's a slightly funny scene where he gives her like some pocket money and she's like, you can afford 3 letters that are 40 characters each. But then it turns out that they have a discount for children, which I don't believe. I think she just made it up, which is fine. So she works with this kid and she writes the letters for him, and that's kind of the central letter writing thing, because they had to put it in, and it's just really, really sappy, even by my standing, and I did find it kind of cringy. It's not like it's bad or anything. It's very kind of typical, maybe above average for the kind of writing subplot you have in the series. But once again, it's just like, is this necessary? This is taking time away from what's supposed to be the ending. Like, if we're going to get an ending, does 70% of this really have to be the side story about this kid? I guess because of the way that ends, it signals the end of the Auto Memories doll, and that there's never going to be professional writers ever again. But I don't know. I'm like 8 minutes into this video and I haven't even started talking about the plot yet, which is a good kind of summation of what a lot of this film is. So we get one of the biggest jumps in logic I've ever seen. This is a massive, I don't know if it's plot hole. It's just very, very convenient. So there's a room that was introduced in the series where the unreturned mail is, or sorry, the mail that they can't find the person for. And the president goes there and he finds a letter that's written with the Major's handwriting. It's not to Violet or anyone, but it's written with the Major's handwriting. So they find it's from this like crappy island that I think is based on Crete, maybe. Basically, it's a very poor island in what looks like the Mediterranean where they grow grapes. And basically the entire adult male population died off during the war. So they go there, and there's a guy who's missing an arm and an eye and looks suspiciously like the Major, who's teaching kids in school. And he's just become like an angst lord, an emo, and he just spends his days crying about how bad the war was and how he ruined Violet's life and how he doesn't have any right to be with her or to tell her that he's alive and stuff like that. And he's abandoned his responsibility as the head of his noble family. He doesn't want to go back to the army. He doesn't want to go back to his home country. He's just kind of sulking out there as a handyman slash teacher. And I think you can already kind of feel what my opinion is of this whole scenario. So Violet and the president go there. The president yells at him. He just acts emo. Violet begs him to speak with her. He refuses. Violet writes one last letter that expresses her feelings to the major. And just as she's about to leave, the major decides to change his mind and that he actually does want to be with Violet and he does want her there. So then she comes back. And I know I'm sounding like I'm skipping a lot of stuff, but I'm really not. That's kind of how fast the central plot gets resolved in like the last 10 minutes of the show, of the movie, of this 2.5 hour long padded monstrosity. And then it goes on like in the epilogue that Violet quit her job and moved to be with the major on the island. Now, I really dislike that because the whole show was about Violet building these relations with the other people at the postal company, them becoming her family, her friends. And when the major shows up, she just immediately abandons all of them to go live with him on like this crappy island in the middle of nowhere. I think like this is a case where I think anything would have been better than what they did. I think it would have been better if the major had stayed dead, if the major had come back with her, if she had just learned to let him go, or something like that. But what we get is just kind of the lamest possible ending. Violet is like a world-renowned Auto Memories doll, and she had kind of replaced her dependency on the major's orders with her ability to give life to people's emotions. And it does feel like kind of a step back from her character, and it kind of undoes her entire character arc, because her entire character arc was kind of coming to terms with the fact that the major wasn't this perfect person, that her entire life wasn't completely dependent upon him, that she'll always love him and he'll always be important, but that she kind of has to learn to be her own person. And I think it's supposed to be that, yeah, she's done that, but now she views the major as an equal, or at least a partner, rather than being his weird daughter. But I just feel it doesn't really come across like that, and it's just kind of... it's just not good. Their relationship's not good. He's not a likable figure in this compared to how he is in the flashbacks. I think what would have made more sense is if the major had have come back with her and she had have kept working as Auto Memories doll, and he had have kind of maybe retired from the military and started his own business or something, or done something else. But like, I don't like that. I don't like that you spent 13 episodes building up all these character relationships and Violet's character arc, and then it all just kind of gets jettisoned at the last minute because the major's back. But once again, I just could be wrong about that. It's not that I have any issue with her being in a relationship with the major. I just felt the way that the story was going, it would have been better if maybe she just had have left him on the island and gone about her own life. The major's kind of so whiny and so like, woe is me. I get that the war was horrible, and I get we shouldn't attack people for having PTSD, but this is a show. It's reflective of real life, but it's not real life. And I just don't think it made for a very good characterization in the movie. Maybe once again it was supposed to be that Violet's the strong one now and he's the weak one, and he has to depend upon her, but that wasn't really well shown. So I think what I'm trying to say is the movie was excessively long. There was way too much extra shit thrown in that didn't focus on Violet or any of the other major characters. The major wasn't very well done. Whatever kind of potential this film had to tell a story, it just kind of comes across very garbled, and it just undermines itself at every turn. But once again, it's not like I'm really upset about this movie. It didn't make me angry. I cringed quite a bit watching it, but I didn't get upset the way I do watching some things. So I would just say, just take the end of the show, as it were. The end of the show is a bit inconclusive. Whether she found the major alive or not, you can probably come up with mentally a much better ending than whatever you see in this film. So that's my review of Violet Evergarden, the movie. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys again real soon.